Welcome everyone to this AI in business webinar that we put together with Viktor. My name is Marcel, and we'll be guiding you through this entire thing together with Viktor Humaj. Viktor, if you could move to the next slide to see our illustrious faces. That's us. We've both been working on AI at Vacuumlabs for the past few months, seeing how fast it's moving and where it's going. And I think we've been seeing a tremendous amount of exponential growth. And even by the end of, we prepared these slides approximately a week ago, and we can already tell that some of the information is not necessarily outdated, but there's been progress even done in that 1 week in terms of some of the technologies we'll walk you through. So absolutely keep in mind that this is still very early. This is the iPhone 1 days of AI and what we're seeing in the world. And as you can remember, it's been a wild ride in technology since 2007 when the iPhone was announced. So let us walk you through what we have discovered so far and where we've come.
Yep. First of all, I don't have that many fingers as depicted in the picture, right? Yep. And I've been overseeing the projects regarding AI in Vacuumlabs. And yep, we'll walk you through some implementations and how we did that. So this would be very much hands-on webinar, right? So really going into lessons learned and practicalities. So looking forward to that.
Perfect. So before we move through, I just want to quickly, for those who don't know Vacuumlabs, we've been around for at least the past decade, but we've really been active in fintech for the past 7 years, really building projects all over the world. As you know, fintech and banking is a highly regulated industry. So there's a lot of tiny little details you need to always figure out so that things move forward, but also brings in minds that really want to solve complicated apps and complicated solutions. So as we've been seeing, there's lots of different companies we've worked with, but one of the big topics that is now coming up both from existing clients, but also from people that are now reaching out, like, have you actually touched AI? Have you worked with AI and worked with LLMs? And we'll talk through what LLMs are in a moment. And we're seeing that will be an integral part of what we do, whether that be in fintech or some of the growing markets that will emerge with AI. So definitely, this is a topic that is top of mind for a lot of people internally at Vacuumlabs, and we really see this as a transformational moment for software engineering, software development, but also how teams work and collaborate together.
All right. So first, start with why now, right? The question, why all the fuss? Why are we now, like all of us, all around us, talking about AI today, right? Because we have AI in some form like over half a decade, and actually you are using AI in your phones, in your appliances, home appliances, in your cars. If you're looking at Facebook or LinkedIn or searching something at Google, right? Everywhere is AI. In particularly, or in the past, maybe it was more of a machine learning, right? So it has been solving particular problems and has been applied into particular places. So what changed and why we now see all these cool features and products built around AI is basically two things, right? First of all, it turns out everything is connected to our language. And that has been the breakthrough around the paper, the transformer architecture, the paper that Google and the research team around Google introduced in 2017, right? With the transformers that gave us the ability to crumble through a lot of language. And what we found out, or what came out of it, is that when you feed a lot of language, right? So in a way, you get a resemblance of our world, of our thinking, right? And that's basically the capability of the large language models such as GPT today, and why it is so useful, right? And in order to do that, you need to crowd through a huge amount of data, basically almost all of the internet, right, and the books and everything that has been written to fed into those models. So that's why we've approached the moment in time through Moore's law and our current computing capabilities and technology in a moment in time where it's basically possible, right, to do that. So these things connected, and with a lot of training, trying, testing, fine-tuning, rewards and reinforcements, we came into the moment where OpenAI released ChatGPT, and soon everybody followed with own models and tools. So it started and jump-started this craze. So,
And really, this is a very pivotal moment in terms of adoption of technology, because we've really, on the top right, you can see a chart or a graph, depending on where you are in the world, of the adoption of technologies like Netflix, Facebook, and others. And they usually took some time to gain adoption from users. But ChatGPT basically is a straight line up there. And this is very sort of quintessential in this entire AI boom that we're going through or starting with, because back in November of 2022, ChatGPT was launched. And ChatGPT, it wasn't the first time that we as people or as humans had the ability to talk to a virtual bot. I mean, probably every single website today that sells anything online has some sort of support chatbot on the bottom right, which pops up and says, "Hello, can I help you with anything?" But those were always programmed the way you would program a dog, or the way you would program um, a robot to do something, to pick something up. These new models, they tend to have a much more mysterious nature to them. When you speak with them, the answers you get, although they are trained on, as Victor said, thousands and thousands of books and websites and Facebook posts and other things, they feel much more human. They pass what they've always called the Turing test, which is you can now almost, without knowing you're talking to a bot, you can feel that the other side is almost human. So this has had a profound impact on us recognizing that even Siri on your phone was still very much a chatbot, but this feels different, and it fundamentally is different because the way it's responding and asking you follow-up questions feels much more human than ever before. And as businesses, you can start taking advantage of this right now, because there's now even an API, an application programming interface, where any developer can write simple commands or prompts into it, and you'll get the same kinds of answers as ChatGPT, but you can integrate that into your own application. So we've already seen that. Like if you're using something like Notion, they already have an AI built in. I don't think it's publicly known, and they haven't shared it publicly, but it's widely thought to be GPT's technology. But there are many others that you might have seen around the internet, which now say they have AI built into them. Well, often they use an API like OpenAI's ChatGPT or GPT technology. A few weeks or months ago, and time moves so fast, I'm not sure, they've more widely announced also plugins, which are these sort of technologies built on top of ChatGPT, which empower GPT to access the internet, to access your apps, to access your calendar. So we're seeing this exponential growth. And when I say exponential, I mean it's moving really, really, really fast. And these plugins are really powerful. I encourage all of you to try them out. However, we're now just, I think last week or less than 2 weeks ago, they announced the ability to share the prompts that you've created and the answers you've got from ChatGPT. So we're now seeing lots of development, and this is just one company OpenAI, which is heavily funded by Microsoft at the moment. Google has its own version called Bard, which is very similar, only accessible in the US and a couple of European countries. But this sort of opening up of this entire AI world has really been quite surprising and quite fast. If you could click a couple more times, Victor. All right. So as I already talked about Google, and the access of people to this technology is now immediate. I mean, you can go to chat.openai.com, you can sign up, you can start using the free version, and for I believe $20, you can have the plus version, which gives you access to ChatGPT 4 and plus plugins, plus other features they enable as they become available. So even regular people who have no programming experience, whether that be copywriters who are already using it, whether that be storytellers who are already using it, marketers who are already using it, can start using it today and really become significantly more powerful than ever before. So we have our first poll or question for all of you. Have you used any of these AI tools? Have you played around with any of them? Have you had a chance to see some of these? So here's the poll, and I'll give you a minute or so to answer it. So some of the options we put in here are voice assistants like Siri, chatbots like ChatGPT, predictive autocomplete. This is something that happens whether that be in Gmail or when you're writing a message on your iPhone. Image generation like Midjourney or DALL-E or similar. Social media filters like Snapchat filters and others. Or have you never tried it? Yes. So most of you have played around with ChatGPT. Obviously, the users of iPhone have played with Siri, but some of you might have Google's Assistant. Obviously, autocomplete is there too, and about a third of the answers are Midjourney and image generation, and obviously social media filters. And I'm surprised actually nobody tried none of these, but I guess that's to be expected with the audience we have here today. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in the poll. And let's move on to the next slide. Excuse me. So to walk us through this, or to really focus the conversation, I think really what we're going to be talking about here is LLMs or large language models, which GPT is one of many now. Including ones that are now completely open source, like the Falcon one that was released recently out of the Middle East, and that one is proving to be one of those that people will build on top of. So let's actually break this down into where AI can be used, so the types of integrations we can do, what AI knows, and then looking into AI in business, and eventually what we found and the lessons learned in the process.
All right. So first of all, like, as we said, okay, so here are some language models, cool things that you can do, but actually how to integrate it into the business, right? So how to work with that in your particular setup, right? First of all, it might be completely fine for you to use ChatGPT, right? And enhance your writing skills, summarizations or things that you need to do in your work. That's completely fine, right? You would be faster. You would get very cool results, and well, you could get far ahead just with that setup, right? So this is the light integration also in our work scenarios, where we basically use and utilize these chat agents or bots or helpers, right, as a companion, where we can talk to them and get some results, right? So that's the very light integration, and also we are using the pre-trained knowledge. That's the important thing, right, in this integration. So we just use the prompts and the pre-trained knowledge, and it helps us in our work. But as it often goes in business, what's important for you is your particular business knowledge and your data and what you are working with, right? That's the gist of what you do. and why it is so interesting and important. So that's the tight integration where you want to utilize the large language models on top of your data somehow, right? And you need to resurface the data. It might be using the plugins or using the embeddings when you use the data in a vector database that's readable for the large language models through the similarity search, and put the data into the prompts, and still it's a chat-like experience, right? So you chat with the agent, with the helper, and you have the interaction. Now the deep integrations, there might be some processes in your business or in your company when this makes sense to basically plug into your process somewhere in between, because it's a work that has been, it's some kind of like tedious work of summarization some data, or classification of some data that's doing someone in your company maybe, and you would like to enhance this process, or maybe switch it up, right? And to have it in the pipeline. So all the other things that comes after are basically dependent on this process, which is enhanced by the large language model, right? This one is a bit more complicated because you need to be careful with that, but it's a very good use case and could improve your business a lot. And the fourth part is, well, it's an autonomous AI, meaning that you have this completely incorporated AI in your business, but without the human interaction, without all of this, it's basically doing its own thing, right? And there's not much of these kind of integrations yet. We're not there yet with the capabilities, and it's really tough to achieve this, right? So moving on, this is a heavy slide, so I'll go a bit slowly here. Here are some like examples of the tools and integrations that you can use today, right? And when we start from the top left corner, right, we start our chart there. So these are the simple integrations. When we go to the right, we get more complex integrations, meaning you need to do more and more things on your side and on your systems to get it work. And when we go down to the bottom of the chart, this is the types of integrations that I was talking previously. And here we do have like 3 swim lanes. The first one is basically, think of it as an GPT, right? Chat GPT, where you go and have this conversation. So there are tools that are basically helping you to pre-program, meaning pre-prompt and pre-train, like in this prompting sequence, some kind of like agents, then you can then utilize, right? So you basically have something like resembling a colleague on a line that you can chat with, and he's as a language model trained to do an answer in some certain way, right? And then you can share with your colleagues. So this is more like an agent setup that you can plug into your work and utilize as of today. And here are some tools that you can check out later. We will be sharing this presentation as well, so you can search it and try it out, right? If it works for you. Then when we go deeper into more complex integrations and complex tooling, there are already tools out there, predominantly by the companies that are doing the basically the work applications, right? Like Microsoft and Google and all these others that are incorporating large language models into the tools that we are using today. So when you are using enhanced email or enhanced Word, for example, or some editor to write your text, so that's the tooling that is in your work right beside you, that you can use, and the language models are right there. But then again, you could be seeking a more advanced integration, meaning the data that you would like to work with and connect to large language models are not connected to those tools, or needs to be pre-processed, or are on some different places and such on. In this case, you might want to build something on your own, to build something that is maybe using some other language models than, for example, GPT models, and deploy it maybe on your own premises, right? So those tools down there are more complex and would require for you to also code it, deploy it, and work with it into a particular pipelines. So depending on what you would like to build, right, and what use cases, each of those types of integrations might be suitable for you. So we could help you with that. And this is also something that what we are trying to ask you now, like what use cases are you typically solving at your business, whether it's copywriting or some routine tasks that you would like to solve with large language models, some customer service perhaps, better analytics, insights, personalized recommendations, or some healthcare diagnosis or other healthcare issues, enhancing cybersecurity, or no particular case in mind yet. So the poll is running. Okay, so automation, right? The automating of the routine tasks. That's the topic that concerns you the most, and then analytics and insights, right? And also improving the customer service. Yeah, that's a good use case. All right. Okay. So we'll talk about similar use cases later on. Thank you for the poll. Let's get to the gist of the business, right? The data and the context.
So, thank you, Victor. The one thing that companies have been doing for a while is they've been collecting data. Data about their customers, coming from the sort of fintech and banking side. There's a lot of information and transaction data, but also whatever business you're in, you're probably going to have a lot of data stored up, whether that be your internal knowledge base, your internal handbooks, your guidelines, your whatever it is you're storing. It's probably stored in, like, I sort of imagine that the huge vault at the end of Indiana Jones, I think it was the first one, where it's somewhere, but nobody really knows where. And you've probably encountered that a lot. And as of now, LLMs, or even generally AI, really isn't there to be able to comb through a lot of it right now. Part of the problem is this word you're going to hear a lot, which is the context or context window. What that means is whenever you're trying to ask something of an LLM, there's a certain limit on the amount of input you can put into it. And, if we had this webinar 2 months ago, I would have told you, well, you can only put in so much. I don't remember what the amount was, but you can put in so much. Right now, we're seeing ones where you can put in entire books, you can put in entire databases of employees, you can put in a lot of information into them, and it's increasing in size. And also through various automations, you can now actually get a lot of the data in easier than before. But what AI can definitely help with is, once you know where all this data is and what that data is, now AI can help you restructure it into a standardized form, which previously would have to hire an entire army of people to do. So whether that be restructuring the data or searching through the data and re-evaluating it into more structured form, that is definitely improving and getting on the better side. Also, with filtering through data that is in natural language is getting better. And asking questions of your data, that is actually something we've already started playing around with, and we're going to talk about that in a short while. But that seems to be one of the fairly functional and good use cases of where LLMs can shine. But we're slowly going to be moving into a world where we're going to be able to manipulate all of the data, review it, fix it, restructure it, or generate completely new data. So it's almost what I'm trying to tell you is, in 2 weeks, in a month, in 2 months, working with data is going to get easier and easier and easier, and the cost will keep going down and down and down. However, as of right now, and this will be one of our key learnings, one of the things you can start thinking about, especially since one of your key questions or answers to the poll was getting better insights and analytics, is, do I know where all of my data is stored? Do I know, at least in general, what it represents? And can I connect to it in a simple way? So that's definitely something you should be thinking about right now. And what we found is that actually knowing that is going to be a huge win in this sort of AI race, as opposed to building the coolest AI app. It's actually about knowing where all your data is so that you can actually push it in. And I also want to remind you, there's a Q&A, and a couple of questions have already been coming in. And one of them is actually talking about the privacy of all that data and so on. We're going to be touching on that as well in a moment as well too. So I think that's going to be a big question in people's mind is, okay, where am I putting this data into? Is it secure? Is it private? Not necessarily in many cases right now. And you should definitely be wary of where the data is going. But one key takeaway for you right now is we need to think about where is all my data, and so that you can actually then start using it. The reason is that AI is really not magic. It's a good way of it has a good way of reasoning around the data that you feed it, but it also has the potential of actually eating it all up. And when I say eating it all up, I'm talking going to servers which aren't designed to be processing business data. ChatGPT is not secure in any sense of the word, especially the free one. So if you're putting in like customer data, customer information, customer transactions, all of that is then going into GPT and OpenAI to help retrain the model or improve the way it's working. So even the engineers internally have access to it. So be very wary of that. If you're paying for the plus version, there's a way to turn that off. In fact, there might be a version of doing that in the free version as well. However, I would stay on the safe side and actually not do that either way, and not use ChatGPT for anything private. If you want to be putting in some data, anonymize it as much as possible so that you can see what it can do with it, but be wary, others will see it for sure, or have the potential of seeing it. Whether now as engineers in OpenAI, or it might emerge somewhere in the future whilst the GPT is answering somebody's question. That might be different with the API. Currently, the API, in the terms of service, they're saying it's not being used for retraining and is not being used to, not people within AI shouldn't have access to it, but it's still early days, so there might still be bugs. I think a more feasible bet here is using actually Microsoft's Azure GPT or Google's various Vertex AI capabilities, which are on the way to releasing full enterprise and medically HIPAA and GDPR graded solutions for this. So again, be very wary of where you're putting that data. A lot of companies are now limiting access to ChatGPT or similar tools like Bard, which is reasonable and sound. On top of that, there are even countries like Italy for a brief time. I don't know what the current status is, but for a brief time, they blocked ChatGPT completely. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see a lot of countries actually implementing some sort of regulation or limitation on LLMs, whether that be from a precautionary or post some sort of data leak. So again, be very wary with these currently publicly available tools, because they can leak your data, whether that be intentionally or unintentionally. And another question is, these systems really aren't programs or applications as we've gotten to know them over the past, was it 30 years of the sort of computer revolution. In a regular application that one of your engineers codes, you can discover an audit trail of what happened with the data or what happened in the application to give you a specific result. Within an LLM, even the actual designers of OpenAI don't really know how it operates internally, because it was achieved through machine learning. So even whether that be Microsoft Research put out a paper on this, but even the creators of ChatGPT, OpenAI, put out a paper saying, we don't really know what's going on inside. We have a guess. So again, it's very hard to monitor. And it's also very hard to get reliable results out of it, as well as let's say ethically right answers from it. And that's the whole entire. If you ever hear alignment, AI alignment, the word alignment is just the topic of, is it aligned with values or not aligned with values that a general part of the human population would accept. You can find lots of use cases already happening where it's not really behaving in a way it should, and you should definitely be wary of this. Like, as much of a AI hype people as Victor and I are, we're still extremely wary of the dangers that can be done if this isn't properly tested and played around with prior to putting into production. So as much as it might seem as magical, and how I was hyping it up about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, when I was talking about the boom, it's really not as secure or as magical as we would hope now. And we're not really sure how fast or how it's going to evolve in the next few years. So definitely be wary, especially if you're using data that could leak, that could put you or your employees or your company in jeopardy. So that's for data. Whether that be something you heard right here, right now, or others, let's put up the next poll, which is around the concerns that some of you might have around this. What are the biggest concerns that you're experiencing, hearing in the companies that you are at, or in general in the world? You should be seeing the poll now. All right. So let me share the results here. So I think the biggest one is really here, the privacy and security. Again, definitely a concern, especially with these public models. The good thing, and we'll get into that in a moment as well, is we're now seeing more and more open source models that are coming out there. What that means is that you could potentially in the future be launching your own, but you could also consider what I already mentioned is the sort of Google and Microsoft enterprise and medical ready, which are similar to how you're already probably running your business in the cloud with. Another concern that is fairly high is the incorrect information and hallucinations. Yes, that can definitely happen, and it will happen even though it's your own data if you put it in. It's definitely significantly improved since, let's say, December. However, it's still happening. Calculations and mathematical calculations are still not there yet, although those are improving as well. And the third one in this poll was replacing jobs. Yes, that is definitely a concern. What we've already seen is multiple companies have announced that they're not necessarily laying off, but they're not hiring for positions because they're experimenting more and more with AI to do the jobs that other people could have done if they had hired them. For now, I think it's more of those people who use it are getting better at using them, and they're getting even more proficient. However, this will most likely have this sort of impact on the market, the same way computers had an impact, the same way um, the horse and carriage had an impact on the world. But this one, again, is significant and extremely fast, whether to our benefit or to our detriment. All right. Victor,
Correct.
pass the mic
So
to you.
thank you. Addressing the privacy and security issues, I mean, it's not, at least for me, unsurprising. That's like the top one question we're getting when we're working with companies around the world. And there are a couple of remedies that you can think of and apply for this privacy and security concern. So first of all, it's of course like trust the model, right? So what you can do is what Marcel said, to have your own infrastructure, basically a cloud or on-prem, and have some solutions that are well, that are basically built for this privacy and security. So as Marcel said, the Microsoft Azure models or Google offerings that currently gives you these or are mitigating these privacy and security concerns, right? Because they are typically built for businesses. So you can do that. And well, we're expecting to increase in these offerings all the other companies to include some kind of like models in the cloud or systems for you to plug in and be on the safe side. Then what you can do, of course, you can work with your data, right? And be very careful what you're sending over. So what you can do is to get rid of the personal information, right? Because in cases that you're not necessarily working with personal information like name or some dates of a person, but you're working with all the other data, you can swap it and do the work with the large language model, and then do some other work when you receive the data, then connect it back again on your backend. So there are some other steps involved in this case, but you can be controlling the data and monitoring what's being processed, right? So this is in the cases where you still want to use some models like GPT, but you're concerned about the privacy. And then what you can do is to control the model completely, of course, meaning that you would use some open source AI models that you can run on your premises or on the cloud. Well, which works well, right? So we've tried a couple of those. Also fine-tuned some models, which was a lot of fun. And they might not be yet as powerful as GPT-4, for example, although it's growing and it's evolving really fast in this area. So open source models are incoming like every week, and each is faster and more powerful than the one before. So we're expecting phenomenal growth in this area as well. Meaning, soon enough, you could be running your own models capable of extraordinary things in your own pipeline, your premise, and also on devices that are extraordinarily small, like on your computers, your mobile phones, even, right? So it will be very near the computing and the models to you and what you try to achieve with that. Right. So that was the fine tuning. And now, let me take you through some examples that we're proud of, that we've done recently for us and some companies around us, and the work that we did with large language models. So First of all, of course, we do have a knowledge bot, right? So we do have a lot of information in our company about the projects, about our company as such, that has been written somewhere, whether it was some places that you need to search for, or a Notion, or a Slack, or whatever. So this was the first and hard lesson for us to do. Is like, okay, so we need to get all the information into like one place to be consumed by the language model in the vector database. And even then, when you just put it there, it might not be enough, because it's not written well, right? So we found out that very early that some of our Notion pages, or our guides, or information that's been sitting there, it's not very well written. And when you put it through the language model, you just get garbage, right? So garbage in, like unstructured and maybe confusing in parts. You get also confusing results. So in this case, we found out that, yep, this is exactly the problem that we need to solve. And we had this huge restructure of our documents and internal documents, which now are yielding very good results. So we kind of like solved the problem with that one. It's working really well. And currently we're at the stage when we are now exploring other possibilities. So for example, this is just one source of data, right? So it's like a handbook, or project pages, or things like that are available for all the company. But now we're like thinking about what are other information we can feed into the knowledge bot, basically. So you can ask it your personal information that's stored, for example, in the HR system or so, which is a bit complicated case, right? Because that can't be open to every employee, right? So in that case, we need to preemptively check what's your who you are, right? So your identity, and then if you have an access to that information, which is a very good practice also for us, because that's something that I imagine you would like to do as well when you're dealing with sensitive data. So this is a very good use case for that. And then we don't have this one yet finished, but we're also thinking about invoking some actions, right? So if you're ordering something through the like the office bot, right? So the operations can fetch you something or something like that. I mean, we do have the APIs, we do have the capabilities, so we would like to just connect it, plug it in, and make it through one interface. So when you want to order something, you just chat with the chatbot, right? And he will make the order for you, and so on. So these are all exciting cases that we're like trying, and at our own chatbot, right? But there are some others that are very cool. So, for example, the Verdicto, it's a law company in Czech Republic. Basically, a bunch of very cool lawyers that has this full service where you can write them a question, legal question that you would like to answer, and they just hop on it and give you a very good answer compiled from all the necessary data, and codex is out there, so you can proceed with that. Obviously, this is an example very ripe for large language models, and what we did is that we helped them build well, basically a system where we get these legal questions from users, right? But then we can't just use the pre-trained knowledge of the language model, because it has been cut off a year ago. There's been some development and so on, and in general, it's not a very good idea for this kind of legal overview, right? Where you have to be a very precise. So we of course have now the whole codex and the laws, and also a lot of additional questions and answers and basically research of the verdict company, their own knowledge base, basically, right? The law knowledge base in these huge databases. So when we get the query from the user, the question, we then do this whole suite of searches, resurface the appropriate information that is then fed into the context, and then it's quite complex chain actually. And then in the end, we get not only a specific answer, but also we get the footnotes and the links and the parts that has been comprised of the actual result. So that's the legal oversight then can check the answer, of course, see if it is correct, right? All the necessary information if it is there, and only after that it's considered as a job done. But it's important to say that beforehand it took like 30 to 40 minutes for the legal to comprise some answers, or maybe even longer, right? So now the time to check it is considerably smaller. It's very fast now to just go through that, see if the answer is correct, and basically they can do much more queries per day than before. So very good use case in that. And the last one, like an example that I like very much is Moneyhoon, a very cool company that is doing basically your personal finances, wealth management, and well, anything that's around money, insurance, mortgages, and everything connected in between. And we are currently working on a couple of things actually. One of those is a Q&A board or an agent that you can chat with about your finances, right? Because all your data are there. So what you could do is ask about your transactions, for example, right? You can ask some questions about your current state of your finances and so on. So the cool thing behind that is that we own the data, meaning we can connect right to the data, and then we can use the language, the natural language, as something that's translated to the fetching of the data, like fetching on the back end, and some pre-computations, because it still is not a very good idea to rely just on language model to do the computations. So we found out that we need to actually do some extra work with that, and only after that connect all the data and make some reasonable answer, right? Another cool use case is imagine that you have also some insurance documents, right? Insurance policy. So each insurance policy, for example, is totally different, right? So there's written this fine print, small print of what the policy actually is, what can you do, what are you insured for, and so on and so on. But when actually something happens, or you have this question like, okay, so what are the policies? What should I do? You need to go through and actually understand like what are the limitations, what are the insured topics or policies, and so on. And that's something that language models are very good at, right? So when you do it right, when you fed the information into the vector stores and databases correctly, you can do a very good search and understanding on top of that data. So it's actually very useful for users to understand in a very meaningful way, and help them out, for example, right, to find out what they can do, and it's very useful for them. So These been some examples that we did recently or are currently working on. And if you have any questions about these, or have some similar cases in your mind that you would like to maybe build or are thinking of, we will be more than happy to chat with you, right? So please leave it then your contacts in the form, or just hit us up on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. And now, some lessons learned. So while building these systems, what we've learned is that, well, it's very easy to do some proof of concept or something that looks cool with large language models. Very, very easy and very, very fast, right? So you can get there in a matter of hours. But it's very hard to get it production ready and cost efficient, because then when you start to play with it and testing and so on, you find out that you are very reliant on data that you're feeding in. So that's often part of the problem that you need to solve, and that takes a lot of tinkering and time. And of course, you need to be sure that the outputs that you're getting are good enough, right? And then connected to that is the debugging. So large language models are very hard to debug, right? Because it's not deterministic. It's basically a probability and statistics, and you can change something in the prompt, in the connection, in data, and you get different results. So it's quite tough to debug it, and you need to be a skilled prompt engineer and know what you're doing with the large language models in order to do that effectively. I mean, right? To do it in effective way. And when I'm talking about the outputs, this is also a bit of an interesting finding, right? Because when we started in the beginning, when we started to work with the large language models and AI and building these cool stuff and tools and features, we find out that we've been like getting some results and working on that, but you are unless you are very specific and clear what the output should look like, right? You can play with that like indefinitely. You can improve it still, you can tweak it still, you can test it still, but in order to progress in your project, for example, it's very good to be clear up front, like what's the example of output, what's the appropriate cases of failures, for example, or maybe what are the differences, or what can be changed in order to work properly. So you need to define it beforehand, so everybody is happy with the progress, right, and happy with the deployment in the end. So that was personally a lesson learned, and I would definitely do that more often now. And also, you need to account for new type of failures, right? So those failures, especially when you connect the large language models into some workflow, right? We've built also workflows that when you click a button, right, something happens. So it's a whole workflow, and then you get the output. So when you have language models connected somewhere in between, you can get sometimes an unexpected results. So it's a different kind of monitoring than when you're working with typical functions, for example, right? That if they fail, they give you some code, error code. So you're like, oh, okay, so it's this again, so I know what to do, and so on and so on. So you're not getting the error codes, you get some weird results, maybe. So you need to account for that.
All right. Well, I think I already got into this a little bit earlier, but really think of LLMs more like reasoning engines and not as oracles. They won't they're not magical. There's a lot of it is pre-trained into them. There's lots of videos on how they actually train, and it's actually kind of cool if you're interested in this. But really, the key is to rather think about their ability to think abstractly, structure, and then combine information together. Um, and we've come across some of those challenges. Victor walked us through them. However, it's not magic yet, although it's starting to be that soon. Next, please, Victor. LLMs are good for some things, some of which we've described. But for now, I think there's still a lot of tasks and all of things that can be done, what we would say programmatically. So actually programming them with programming languages, or doing them manually. So, some of you had concerns around automating some of those tasks. And we're going to be sharing the slides. And there are a couple of tools that you can already start using to automate activities using GPT. And these are some of these agents that Victor described. But really, currently, the actual cost is a major barrier, because when you're actually trying to use the AI for everything, it becomes extremely expensive very quickly, because you're paying for every new word or token, but let's think of them as words, for every new word generated. So if you're trying to use this for like everything, and to basically have no more applications in your business, but rather have everything go through AI, currently the costs are really, really restrictive. These will definitely go down. We're already seeing that 3.5 versus GPT-4, but it's still probably much faster to actually hire programmers and hire engineers to do a lot of the early stuff, preparing the data, organizing, reconnecting various APIs you have, and then putting that into the AI to do that little bit of extra magic. Because right now it is actually fairly expensive, either way you slice it, compared to just running up a server up in the cloud and running a regular application. So it's probably good to test out before you actually commit to rebuilding your entire business into AI. And again, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know your data, you don't know where the data is, you don't know how we're going to be working with it, where it's coming from, you're probably going to get garbage out, whether that be through hallucinations because it doesn't have enough context to give you the answer, or just because it's not really there yet to be as magical as a lot of the hype seems to be saying. And one final thing, right now, they're not really built to succeed. They're built to give you the most likeliest answer that they want based on the training, the best possible answer based on the training data that they had. And they're currently not programmed or created, that's probably a better word, created to perform successful tasks. They're performed to give you better answers based on what you ask them, although this is going to be changing a lot in the future. So definitely something to keep in mind. Right now it's more of
It's also about the prompting, right? So yeah. So also you need to keep in mind that although it looks like a colleague or a friend in a way, right? It's chatting with you. You still need to like specify the task correctly. Like let's do this. Let's see that this is the real output and outcome, and it should look like this, and so on and so on. So yeah, definitely.
yes, you need to actually know what you want to get out of it. So finally, we've been running for over an hour, but we just touched on LLMs, right? But there's a lot more that is already out there that has less to do with language. One of them has to do with something called diffusion, and we won't get into the technicalities of it. But one of the questions here was, how do you get a nice little AI generated profile picture? Well, mine is generated through Midjourney by prompting it with an original image of mine and then giving it a simple prompt to make it more magical. So you can definitely play around with Midjourney, but Microsoft has its own product called Microsoft Designer, Adobe has their own called Firefly, and there's also DALL-E from OpenAI. These are all AI generated images that were based on just a couple of words. So you can create a vast amount of content. And again, I think the big question that many people are asking, do we have copyrighted these images? Well, in some countries like Japan, they seem to be saying you have the right, like the original owners of whatever the data was trained on don't have the rights. But there are other countries where this might be disputed. There's a couple of cases in the US already happening around copyright law. So we don't know yet. But I think your safest bet if you're working with images or pictures is to work with Adobe's data stack. So Adobe Firefly. And then if you go to the next slide, Victor, please. Adobe's Photoshop has what they call generative fill. So basically they allow designers to now basically just tell it like, I want to remove this, I want to add this, and it does it fairly magically. So this is something that they haven't released for commercial use yet, I believe, or parts of it aren't. However, all of their stuff is trained on data that they have a commercial license to through their sort of stock program. So we're probably going to see a commercial model which is fully legal and compliant through Adobe. So if you want to stay on the safe side, work with the Adobe stack based on what we know so far. But there's other tools that you can play around with, and even Google Photos, which is designed for you and me that have photos stored on Google Photos. We can now start, or we will soon be able to move around things in the picture, add, remove, change things based on what we want and need. And obviously that's your own picture. So that's for personal use. But we're going to see more and more of this across many different companies, but these are some that you can try and play around with. And finally, if you move to the next slide, Victor, please. We also have generated video and worlds. So here is a video for the band Linkin Park, which is generated using Kyber. These are sort of based on prompt and images and audio and things you feed it, it will be able to generate you even full movies eventually. And this technology is also moving very fast. So it was very rudimentary and simple at the end of last year. Right now, we're starting to, like 2 days ago, Runway announced Gen 2 or publicly launched, and you can now try it. So if you download the Runway app, you can type in a text and it'll generate the video for you based on that text. It's still not perfect, but it's significantly better than it was a few months ago, and it'll keep improving on and on. And I think the big question mark here is Apple. On Monday, they announced their Vision Pro headset. Along with that, a set of lots and lots of tools to be generating worlds, what they're calling worlds, that will be using machine learning. They will be using LLMs. They will be using diffusion. They will be using many technologies. And they never use the word AI in their entire presentation. They use transformers. They use machine learning. They use other words to describe them, but they're very much using AI to build out their next vision for spatial computing. And this is definitely going to keep going on and on and on and on. So really our recommendation is things are changing every day in the world of AI. So we both recommend you to play. There was one question that came in the middle of the presentation was, so should I wait a couple more months until this is more ready? Or should I start learning and playing around with it now? If this is of any interest to you, I definitely recommend just playing, like not actually using it necessarily day-to-day in business, but trying to at least understand it and getting a feel for how it works, how it's evolving, because the growth we're seeing with this technology is going to be much faster than with iPhones or even computers before that. The exponential growth, we're very much in the eye of the storm, and we're not really sure where it's going. It's going to become more private. There's going to be personal AIs that will be running on the phones that we have. Can't see the phone. Even what Apple is doing is technically one of those. We're going to see this more and more and more, and you becoming familiar with this world and what it's capable of might actually unlock opportunities for you, whether that be in your current business or in future businesses you might want to start. And this is really, I guess, a point for us to open up to questions, since we're already over time because we're so excited about this entire topic. But really, we encourage you to play and really try all this out, because even though it might not really be as secure or as private or as fast or as cheap as we would many like us for it to be, but it's definitely going to be a sea change in the way we work, in the way we collaborate, and in the work we live. So I really encourage you to jump in. So let me see what the questions are that have already come up here. We had the question about the profiles. There's many tools right now in the iOS store to generate nice AI generated avatars. One of the ways of doing it is Midjourney. Victor, what did you use for your profile picture with 11 fingers?
I'm thinking hard. I'm trying to remember. It was one of those. I've tried one of those tools when you upload your photos, right? And they actually create your presentation that then you can use to create your various images and positions and so on and such. But I failed to remember the name. I might check it out. But it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
But there's lots of them that you can play around with, even directly out of your phone. Again, consider your privacy. You, just like with any application, whether that be social media or anything else, you're sharing it to the world. So your pictures are going to be out there. To really get secure production grade, enterprise ready things, GPT-4's API is the first start of that, because they are preparing for a full business suite, but there will be more, and there will be open source models and others. But really, I think this is the question that even Stefano's question here, which was asked about half an hour ago around privacy. You always balance the privacy of your business and the way you work, and how much you are willing to risk and not risk data. This is really your call in the end. But keep in mind that the exponential growth, the training of these models could mean that your data just leaks somehow. So maybe if you want to stay on the safer side, go more the open source model. Victor already talked about it. We've explored some of those. We definitely love to have a conversation with you whether some of those might be right for your scenario. For others, we might just go the GPT-4 route, or another option through Google's Vertex suite, which seem to be graduating and maturing extremely fast as well. And in terms of if your company is blocking LLMs, which is another question, it might be wise, especially if you're dealing with very sensitive data, especially in the medical and financial industry. I would definitely not feed any data into the public ChatGPT or any of the public models, because that data can leak, and that would be very unfortunate. Are there any other further questions that people have here on the call? And obviously, if you want to go through anything we said in this presentation, we're going to be sharing the presentation as well as the recording afterwards, so that if there's anything you missed, you can definitely catch up on it. There were multiple people who asked about that. And yeah, I mean, happy to answer any questions right now. And if not, you can definitely reach out to us directly. That we'll be sharing a form where you can sign up for a call with us if that's what you're interested in. Oh, thank you. My colleague just posted it in there. So if that's anything, if there's anything you're curious about, this is obviously non-committal. So we're also very curious about what others are thinking about. Just because we're big fans of the growing AI boom. Victor, were there any sort of final things, whether that be to some of the big questions that came up, or anything else that you'd like to also share with the group here?
So I'm looking forward to the conversations, right? So it really is. No question is small enough. I mean, use the forum. Reach out to us. I'm really happy to share our learnings. I'm really happy to share the inner workings, even some more complex infrastructure or whatever, it's on top of your mind or whatever. So happy to share, happy to discuss, happy to come up with some ideas with you. So yep, just take up on the opportunity, and looking forward to the discussion.
All right. As you were talking, Juraj popped in with a question. Juraj, thank you for joining. Where do you expect AI might move with quantum computing? What is the next level? Viktor, do you have a position on this?
Oh, that's a tough one, right? I'm let's first about like where can AI move with the current speed, which is exponential, and it's really really fast, and even quantum computing. I mean, that's like it's really hard to imagine, really hard. Marcel, I don't know if you have.
No, all I keep thinking is I'm right now in the middle of a book called Scary Smart by Mo Godot. He's the ex business head or CEO of Google X. And he wrote the book called Scary Smart, which is all about this. He wrote it like 6 months ago, and already some of the things he said, like by the time you're reading this might have happened, and some of that has already happened. So it's really, and he gets into that sort of quantum computing. He basically says we have no idea, because this is the whole idea of the singularity in AI, which is a term taken out of physics, which is we have no idea what is beyond the event horizon of, say, a black hole. It's a singularity. We have no idea what's behind it. And if we try using AI with quantum computers, I'm sure if somebody is already trying it, but we haven't really delved into it. But I'm scared to think of what's on the other side of that.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining. It was fun for us to prepare this. We tried to delve into some of the key findings that we had, although, as you know, there's way more beyond LLMs. There's way more behind what's hidden in the world of spatial computing that Apple has started talking about. Although, you know, Meta has already been in the game for a while, Magic Leap and others have already been exploring it. And you know, I'm really excited to be living in the world while this is happening. Although there is definitely risk with AI as well, and I don't want to understate it or overstate it just yet.
Yeah,
great.
So, yeah, maybe even if you don't have some use case to discuss, just leave us a feedback. Maybe if there's some specific topic for us, if you would like to tackle next, for example, some let's say particular technical problem, or AI in fintech, or AI in healthcare, or whatever it's important for you, so that we can know what to focus on next. So this one was like the first introductory into the large language models and AI, but maybe next webinars we can go maybe more deeper or in specific directions.
Absolutely. All right, so that's just lots of things, lots of final words. All right, Viktor, thank you for joining me on this one, and see you in the world of AI, spatial computing, and magic.